right, we are live. Jack, thank you very much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Doing good.
All right, all right. And you're over there in New York, correct?
Long Island, which for those people that don't know, basically where I'm located is, about, 17 miles from Manhattan. But if you drive there and there's no shelter in place, no shelter in place, I can make it there, in under 30 minutes with it. You know, when things get back to normal, it's probably about an hour and 20 minutes.
Traffic, the bane of today's society. That's great. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us, you already told us who you are. So tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you got into real estate in the first place.
I was born in Brooklyn. Uh, Wound up, starting to work when I was 15. Strong work ethic that I got from my mother. Wound up starting a catering company at the age of 15.
Oh, wow.
That went along shoveling snow, etc. during winter and looking for odd jobs. Through college, worked at my stepfather's meat packaging plant. I hated it, but graduated from Brooklyn College and went into his business over there. He said I was going to take it over, and I really hated it. So the bottom line is my two brother-in-laws were both in commercial real estate, one in Manhattan, one in Long Island. Since I had recently moved to Long Island, I naturally started to work here. After about 7-8 years, I wound up became partners in a company that was actually, I think that they were the 48th largest independent brokerage in the country at the time, Sholem and Zuckerbrot. After that, wound up became a partner in another firm, and right now it's my own shop. Used to have 17 brokers. Everyone was older than me. They all retired. So I got basically with three people. But I have 42 years in the business. The other two guys are in the business longer than me. So
Nice.
so that's where my expertise is, basically anything commercial. After 42 years, if you really you're really involved in the business on a day-to-day basis, you're there. Office leasing is my strongest suit. Anything in sales there, what to look out for, what to expect, calling the market. I pretty much have my hand on it.
I love it. 42 years. That is a long career. So I'm sure you pretty much know everything there is to know about commercial real estate, specifically in Northeast, but I mean, pretty much anywhere, I'm sure. So that's great. That's great. You started, you were young, you started in snow shoveling and catering. And then you moved over to Long Island. You worked in a meat packing facility, which you hated, which makes sense. It doesn't sound like the best job. And then you went on to commercial real estate, which you stuck with it for 42 years, which is longer than most people's career these days. Is they don't stick with one career longer than a couple of years. So 42 years that's an accomplishment in and of itself. So tell us a little bit. You went into your business right now a little bit, but kind of give us the bread and butter of what you do. You said you do commercial. You said you do office. What is it that kind of brings in the dollars for your business?
Well, I do consulting, which I do all over the country, which I'm really enjoying these days because you hear all different stories. And you get to interact with brokers because you can't do consulting outside of your area without you have to learn what's happening in the area there. And every market is different. There's just different tweaks, and it's just different. But other than that, it's selling properties, leasing properties, getting called in on problem situations, usually by tenants, but sometimes by landlords who are, they don't know how to handle a particular problem, and they just call me and they say, Jack, have you ever experienced this? Well, what can we do? And you'd be surprised. I'm an SIOR. For those that don't know, Society and Industrial and Office Realtors, there are 3,000 members in the United States, approximately. It's the highest designation you can get as a commercial broker. So I have 3,000 people out there when I'm either doing consulting or just if I need a question on something that I can reach out to. And we all get involved with each other, if we have an answer to a particular problem. So.
Nice. I love it. Yeah. Having a network like that, especially when it's related to your specific niche, has to be, as good as gold. I wish we had something like that around here. So, as you know, this is a real estate investing podcast. So we really try to focus on the investing side of things. So I'm going to ask just a specific question regarding investing, because I know there's plenty of commercial investors out there, and I'm sure you've dealt with your fair share. So if, putting your glasses, your investor glasses on, if somebody were to want to get into commercial real estate investing, if they wanted to buy a commercial property, from your basic retail, strip mall, kind of one piece of commercial real estate to an office building, what are the steps that person should take? What is it that they should be asking? What are the things that they should be looking at?
Well, the first thing is you need cash. If you're not liquid, no one's just going to give it to you because they like you and to cover you 100%. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So very often people get involved and they don't have enough liquidity. They figure that they'll have family members, friends, business associates go in with them. And everybody likes to say yeah to things until it comes time to writing out a check. And then all of a sudden I have, the college tuition bills. My wife wants a larger house, and it doesn't happen. So the first thing is to make sure you have your capital, in lines, have some relationships with lenders, and know what you're getting into and work out the numbers, see what you actually can afford, and don't look at properties that are way out of your league because you're wasting your time, and it's just, you can only get into trouble. People feel that, they look at a property and they hear, wow, it has, a 5 cap, a 7 cap, this, that. Well, it doesn't mean much if the lease expirations on the 2 largest tenants, which are the only credited tenants in the building, are coming up in a year or two. It means nothing. Okay, so the quality of the tenant, big time, even though things still happen with quality tenants. We're seeing it now in COVID-19. Stuff happens. Going to, Chapter 11, and all of a sudden the lease that you thought that was ironclad is gone. So
I like
you
it.
have to plan. That's the truth. You have to plan on the worst. You're talking about all these retail outlets that are probably going to wind up going out, and they're household names. They've been around forever. But you're financing, and you have to know where to go in order to find the properties.
Yeah.
Industrial, and this is when I speak, I'm speaking about Long Island, but there'll be times that I'll mention things around the country. The strongest by far, is a company. It's medical, which I'm going to get to, but really industrial warehousing. That has taken off big time in the last 4 or 5 years. From what I've seen with COVID-19 is that we're going to make sure that we have certain amount of strategically located warehousing with PPP along with other things, because I think that we're going to be looking to take certain manufacturing away from other countries and to bring it closer to the United States and to do more here. Create some more jobs, and we have the land to build it. Not necessarily on Long Island, but there's plenty of areas in the United States where you can put up warehousing and make towns come alive and get creative over there. Medical is always good. Doctors, when they go in, they want their patients to know where they're located. They don't want to relocate unless they absolutely have to. So medical is always strong, and people are talking about the fact of, medical, people are doing it through the internet talking. That's fine for certain things. In the long run, when you have something really wrong with you, or you just need an annual physical, you can't do it online. You have to physically go in there. And so medical is
You
always
got a body, they got to look at it. They can't do that online.
you got it. It's always going to be very fun. Then you come up to the two questions. You have office, which will be impacted a bit. And there are people that say everybody experienced working from home and they're not going to be going to the office anymore. The office buildings will all go under. It couldn't be further from the truth. Remote access and working has been going on for many years, and every year it becomes a little more. I'll give you an example. William Penn Life, which people know the name. Basically, I represented them exclusively for over 30 years. Their format is they sell through other agents, and when people call them, they don't canvas per se. At least they didn't. So after all these years, they gave up all their office space, and people just work out of their homes. Now, if they want to work out of an executive suite because they don't want to be in the house with their kids or whatever, that's one thing. But there's no office space for them anymore. That's it. It's gone. It ended about 3 years ago. So while there are trades that can work at home, they still have to go in the office once in a while. And the question is, are those people going to share one desk, one cubicle, or one office? The answer is chances are not. Can certain things be done? Yes. But they're still going to need an office to go to. There, as much as you can store on computers and in the cloud, there's always paperwork that you need to keep handy. There's always secretarial work that you really have to be there with the person and review with other people, that you're not going to wind up being comfortable just doing it on a Zoom call. You're going to wind up wanting to stay in a conference room and review it. And with let's say the 10% of the office space that'll go away, if you're leasing 10,000 feet somewhere and 10% of that is going away, you're still not doing anything with your space. It's still there.
Yeah.
You're not gonna
Still
move
off 1,000 feet.
reconfiguring stuff. You may wind up, changing some things around, but remember, the flow of your office space probably accounts for about, up to 30%. So we're talking about, 70% of that 10,000 feet and 10% of that. So it's really 700 feet is what's really the difference. So it's not going to change totally. Yes. So people are going to wind up building smaller offices. Chances are, yes, smaller individual offices. Over the years, we've had office space that always had to be on an outside window. And then 10, 15 years later, all the open landscape had the outside window, and all the offices were on the inner core with glass partitions. Then it went back the other way. And there's always a switch. Things are always happening. I don't think anybody's going to be rushing to build new office buildings unless there's a demand for it or somewhat pre-leased. But I don't think that there's a problem with the office market. There will be some buildings that are taken down, that are older, that are inefficient, and depending upon the landscape and what you can put over there, if you can put some type of industrial use, it makes sense to do. If not, then probably medical. The big problem that's we're going to wind up seeing is the retail component. Between Amazon, between just all the stores, basically, that you can buy their product online and have it delivered within a day or 5 days without a cost, and try it on. If you don't like it, send it back. And I know that from my daughters, that there's always packages arriving, and they live in Manhattan. I get the packages at my house. So they come to visit, they try the stuff on, they keep it, or they go ahead and they leave it for me to bring back. So, to drop off at the post office or postal service. So the retail is going to be a problem. Restaurants are going to be hit very, very hard, because even now, I would say if they break out even and they keep business going, they'll thrive later on. But, in the warmer weather, you can eat outside for those areas that do have an outside, which they're permitted to use. But there are so many problems with having people go from a restaurant, from an inside going to outside, that never did it before. There's just so many issues going on, and I'm not going to start going over the individual issues or whatever, but so many things can wind up going wrong. Even the fact of just feeling comfortable eating out in a restaurant, not knowing if the guy in the kitchen is wearing a mask and wearing gloves, and if someone took their temperature in the last hour. And the menu they gave you, if it's not a throwaway menu, who touched that before? So I think restaurants have a long, long haul in front of them. Some will survive, some won't. Certainly the pizza places are going to still be great. They're going to do the bagel place, do great. For those people in Seattle, if you don't know what a bagel is,
we got our coffee down, that's for sure.
Okay, yeah, there you go. But no, there are certain restaurants or takeout places that are going to do very, very well, if not better than they did before because of COVID. But it's going to be very tough on restaurants. A lot are going to close down. Some will take that place, all depending upon when we have a vaccine or we feel comfortable with with medicine over there to see that that the effects are toned down and you're not going to die from it. The restaurants are going to have big problems. The retail stores, as I said, with Amazon and with others, it's just a lot of problems. The malls, a lot of problems. Some malls, I believe, are going to wind up cutting a section off and seeing if they convert it into apartments, into rentals.
So I want to unpack. You've gone through a lot so far, and I just want to unpack it just to make sure that we have everything that you're saying correctly. So you've went through the different sectors of commercial real estate, and you said office, industrial warehousing, and medical office space. Those are the safe ones. Those are the ones that you don't think are going to be impacted as much by COVID going into the future. Retail and restaurant, those are the ones that have become more of a risk, are kind of on the fence whether they're going to be as strong in the future. Is that right?
That's correct. Office is somewhere in the middle. Okay. The warehousing, industrial, and medical, they are absolutely fine.
Okay, that's good. And so I want to unpack this a little bit more. At the very beginning of what you were talking about, you mentioned that when somebody is looking at buying a commercial property, if the lease is up in a year, then it might not be as safe of an investment as if the lease were up in 10 years. And so I just kind of wanted to ask, what is the average lease length that you look for when it comes to buying a commercial property? What is a general term when you put it into a contract? I'm sure it depends on the sector that you're working with, but just overall, what is a average lease length?
Well, let me just mention one thing. There are times that a short lease, remaining term, is beneficial. If you have somebody that's paying well under market and you have a hot property, that's fantastic. Okay, what I was referring to before was really if you have somebody pretty much at market and the lease is coming up and you don't know if they're going to stay, and then you have downtime, you have brokerage commissions, you have carrying costs. It's not something you have to look into that over there. Basically speaking, if you have quality tenants, you want to have I'd say 7 years on there, 7+ years. Which is why very often when we're negotiating terms, we'll get tenants that want shorter terms, and the landlord says, "No, I'll give you some better terms, but I need the longer length of lease because I'm looking to refinance." So to refinance, you hope to have longer than 7 years, probably 10, but you're going to want at least 7 years on all the tenants there. You're going to want to check their leases regarding security, options. Just because you're told that, certain things exist or not, you have to read it yourself. You have to see what's going on. So you have to investigate.
Okay, perfect. So that kind of, there are a lot of people watching the show are, they're not familiar with commercial investing. And so they're not really familiar with the space. Can you kind of just outline why investing in commercial real estate is so beneficial? Like, why would you choose it over I mean, you have generally all of your experiences in commercial, so you don't have a lot in single family or residential. But why would somebody want to invest in commercial? What are the benefits?
All right. Well, let me first go. When you say residential, there's houses, which I would never go touch, and then you have apartment buildings. And
Okay.
apartment buildings, depending upon the location, and in New York, if you have an apartment building and it's a rental, you have gold. You have gold. So, if you see, you can see the sports memorabilia back over there. That's one thing that Alex Rodriguez did great. He has an advisor that's from Florida, and she had told him from day one, all your money, apartment buildings, and that's what he does.
Didn't know
Just
that.
apartment buildings. Okay, and he's done unbelievably, and she gave him some great advice. Just to buy the right location, and then you're good. But as far as on the commercial side, if you get the right property, not only will it go up in value, but you have something that's going to be paying off for as long as you're going to wind up having it, as long as it's the right property. But you need the proper management on it. A lot of people think that a management company, well, they collect the rent. Someone has a problem, they make a call. Those are things you can do yourself. What a real management company does is keep the building from the top, which it starts at the top. It starts with the roof. Most important part of the whole building is the roof. So it starts with the roof and goes down. And you have to keep the building, the structure sound. You have to know what has to be done in the coming years, and to be planned, have a 3 to 5 year plan on what has to be done, have money allocated for it. And you also have to know regarding your leases in the building. An example would wind up being that on your escalations, if you have a direct operating pass-through, which means your costs in the building are passed along to the tenants there, you can, and depending upon if there are caps that the tenants negotiate or not, you can keep your building up in a certain fashion, and the tenants will wind up paying for it. It all matters, what the work is and what's needed. But it's the right investment pays off big time. But there's a risk with everything. You could wind up having a fantastic tenant. Everybody thought WeWork was so great. To be quite frank with you, from as soon as they came out and they said, we're going to keep on growing. When someone says that, there's an issue. And I had friends that work there, and I said, this isn't going to work out. You can't say we're just going to keep on growing. You have to have a point where you say, we're going to stop. Okay. And create demand. So a lot of people in the commercial end knew that wasn't going to go anywhere, but you had some landlords that their entire building went to WeWork, and they said, it's $50-70 billion company. We hit a home run. They're going to be here forever. They signed a 20-year term with us. Yeah, well, not such a good
not
story.
now. That sucks.
So you never really know. You're not there looking at the books. No one's going to be 100% right, but you have to be careful. There's always that risk that large tenant that you have doesn't make it. And I'll give you one example of how you could protect yourself on a triple net basis deal. And that is there was an office building, let's call it 300,000 feet. And they had Grumman that was in the building. This was on Long Island. And the landlord was very smart. They saw Grumman needed to sign a 10-year term. So he had them sign a 9, 10, and 11-year term. Each floor had a different lease expiration. What it did was, and they had to exercise it, they had to exercise their option to renew a year ahead of time. So he only had to lease up one full floor if they decided to give it up. And eventually they did. And he was able to lease out the building and not have any downtime, or much less downtime, because he was ahead of the game. He knew what was going on.
That's interesting. That's really smart. So he leased out each individual floor. He had a separate lease agreement with the same individual tenant.
You got it.
Huh. That's smart. I like that.
Yeah. And it was with Grumman, who, was acquired by, I guess it was Lockheed Martin or whatever else. I mean, it was huge contractor and mostly government work, but he wanted our protection. If you want my whole building, I don't want it back in one swoop. That's, that's going to be tough to do on a Long Island marketplace. So give me back 100,000 feet at a clip a year ahead of time and allow me to market it. And it sounds good.
That's a smart investor right there. I like that. All right, so we try to keep these between 20 and 30 minutes, so we're running on the end of the podcast time here. But before we head out, I want to talk a little bit more about your experiences and about your stories. We all know real estate is it's an up and a down roller coaster. At times you feel like you're in the gutter, and at other times you're on the top of the world. So kind of take us to one of the times when you just felt you were at the bottom of the barrel. And what was that experience, and what was the lesson that you kind of pulled from it?
Other than the fact of 3 months ago, where a year and two's worth of work, everything died.
That could be it. That could be it. It might have been COVID.
No, there have been a few times in the commercial business, like in all businesses, but especially in commercial real estate, there are a lot of people that are unethical on both sides. We're talking about brokers. We're talking about companies that you represent. We're talking about landlords. Most are fine, but you do run into situations where you do work and someone comes back and just finds a loophole, or all of a sudden, has their attorney on auto dial and put you in an awkward position. To where you don't know how to react.
Right.
So these things happen. And hopefully they don't happen that often. We have, won't go into the whole thing, but we had a case where we had, shown a tenant, my brokers did, some property. Property wasn't really out there. They found it. They showed it to 2 or 3 different people of the same company. The president of the company said, "No, we don't want it. We don't want it." And he went ahead and he signed a deal on his own.
Oh, man.
We save on brokerage.
Yeah.
Well, he figured, what are you going to do, sue me? Yeah.
Yeah. Going behind your back, I've had that happen to me a few times. And it's a rough thing. It's the reality of the business. There are people out there that'll stab you, but you got to keep your head up. That's for sure.
Yeah, but that does happen, and it makes you. And there's nothing, even when you're right and you go to court, you get that sinking feeling. It's not, if an attorney, they're used to it, they go in there, but when you go in there, and you're being questioned, it's just not a comfortable feeling what that person on the other side is going to decide to try and make you look like. Okay, so it's never comfortable, so you don't like it. Just want everybody to deal straight and just do the right thing. So
the lesson there, I mean, that's a tough lesson, because you can't, even if you feel you have a great judge of character, sometimes, people slip under the radar. And in that situation, it sounds like you couldn't have done anything because he went behind your back and you couldn't have really known that ahead of time. So I suppose the lesson would be to not deal with people that you don't feel comfortable with, but sometimes you just can't grab it there. So
you don't know.
All right. So that's the bottom. So now take us to the top. Like, why do you love real estate? Commercial real estate. Why are you still in it? What gets you up in the morning?
I'll tell you, it's there were times that it was mostly the money. Be able to buy what you want, do what you want, and not having to think about it. But at a particular time in your life, after you're comfortable enough, and the kids are all out of the house, the colleges were paid for, took care of the kids and everything else. Fortunate, right place, right time. You start looking at other things that you can wind up doing. And what I realized was, in commercial real estate, you make some great contacts. Okay. And it's not all about, knowing a landlord that's a billionaire. or knowing example, I was a consultant for Sterling Equities, which is the Wilpons that own the Mets. But
Wow.
it's the other connections and the work that you did. I sat on the Long Island executive board of the American Cancer Society, so I met a lot of influential people there. And again, through that, I became, I handled Getty Realty for probably 20 years. But it's just the relationships that you meet along the way and the people, and it's very interesting. Some people, just they're not your cup of tea, and I'm not everybody's cup of tea either. But others you just look at and you say, wow, these are really great and wonderful people, and if I can ever help them, I'm going to. And I find that out right now through relationships, that I can reach out to some people that I just met through other people through the business, that'll go out of their way to help a cause or someone else that they never met just because they're good people. And that's what I'm really, a big part of me right now is I had started a 501c3, a charity regarding World War II, Holocaust, and other genocide education in New York public schools. I sit on New York State Task Force because of that, but it's and talking to other states about similar issues and mandating it, because history does repeat itself and our kids aren't educated enough out there. So I really appreciate helping other people, and the business has allowed me to meet a lot of people, and that are also activists per se. And we do communicate and we do assist each other, and it's a good feeling, and it makes you just feel that you're doing the right thing.
I like it. Yep. You are not the first person to come on here and say that the thing they love about real estate is the relationships they build. And I mean, same goes true for me. The people you meet, that's it's better than gold. So I'm right there with you. We are running at the very end of our segment here. So before we hop off, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, what would be the best way to do that?
My email is the initial J, and then Britvan, B as in boy, R as in Robert, IT as in Thomas, V as in Victor, AN, at realbrokers with an S at the end, .org. And my office line is 516-864-0011.
Perfect. All right. Well, Jack, I'm sure I can speak for everybody listening and watching. We really appreciate you. I really appreciate having you on here, and you sharing everything that you shared with us today. So thank you for jumping on. For everybody watching and listening, if you want to get in contact with Jack, he just shared his email and phone, or I will put his LinkedIn page in the show notes so you can jump there. Other than that, we look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.
Everybody stay healthy.
Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate Investing Club. If you've watched this far, I'm sure you've gotten a little bit of value out of this. So we would appreciate it if you hit that thumbs up, share it with your friends or family, whatever it may be. And if you'd like to share or partner with us on a deal, we absolutely love partnering on deals and are always looking for quality projects. Go to www.therealestateinvestingclub.com to get in contact with one of our partners. Otherwise, I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.